Hello, guys. Welcome. Come in, come in. Happy Wednesday night to everybody. I hope you're doing great. If you're here in North Carolina, we've got a lot of storms. So if I've got some spotty connection here, we'll know why. So we have a very special guest tonight that's going to be discussing with us in detail comprehensive sex ed, because in California, they've got this big time problem, but we really have some problems here too in North Carolina. So we've been keeping our eye on this. This is developing news. This new standards is going to come from the top down, from the Department of Public Instruction and the State Board of Ed. There's an LGBTQ activist who is kind of running this show at DPI, who's going to be helping rewrite the sex ed curriculum. Here's some of the stuff that Ellen Essick did, I think in about 2015. Here are some of her greatest hits. So we've known for a while about this gender unicorn. We've known about the gingerbread person. We've been seeing it lately. It's been in the news. Our great Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson has elevated this to the forefront for everyone. She's the one that injected this nonsense into the bloodstream here in North Carolina schools. So this is some of her handiwork. You're going to see the pronoun madness. We thought that was just a new woke development. Ellen Essick, who now sits at the DPI, she was doing this stuff back in 2015 before it was cool. This is absolutely patently ridiculous. The suggestion that because a little boy, guys, who looks like he's 2 or 3 there, plays with a doll, he might be gay, or let's go ahead and transition him. Somebody like this, I think we can all agree, didn't belong anywhere near rewriting the sex ed curriculum. The restroom nonsense, that's crazy. Changing official records. We know now that North Carolina is, that we know of, the first state in the union to go ahead and drastically change the official school records, that if a kid goes in, they can put up another name that's not legally assigned to them and change their gender, maybe not, without parental consent or knowledge. So all this is going on. So this interview tonight is very important because comprehensive sex ed is best explained by an expert. And I'd say best explained, but Kelly, you're going to come on here and really scare the hell out of everybody. How are you?
I'm doing well. Went mountain biking today with my kids. It was fun.
Well, in this business, you have to do that. You've got to get away from this, because this stuff can be so overwhelming, which leads me into the story of when we met for the first time. It was over a year ago now. And we met with my friend Aaron Alexander introducing us. And we had maybe a 2-hour conversation that night. I couldn't sleep all night. We were comparing notes about California and North Carolina and how similar they were in all the wrong ways.
Right. Yeah. And the massive amount of indoctrination is coming at us in every direction. It's like a never-ending abyss that is one thing after another. And comprehensive sexuality education first started to be understood by parents in California 2 years after it had been passed. So that was 2018. It became law here in 2016. And as a friend of mine likes to say, comprehensive sexuality education isn't usually brought into a district or a state by desire. It's always by a mandate, because nobody in their right mind would force this or want this for kids. It has to be forced. And so through the passage of the California Healthy Youth Act, and I think I even saw that in your article, that phrase, healthy youth or healthy school, that's a big phrase too, because what happened here is they really branded their bill for comprehensive sexuality education as this California Healthy Youth Act. So they're rebranding what health even means and redefining it.
So let me give the background. Let me give the background here in North Carolina. So in North Carolina, abstinence must be taught, but there's a caveat, also prevention. So one cancels out the other. So constitutionally speaking, a sound basic education is the standard here in North Carolina for what is offered inside of and education, like the guts of it. What is it? So nowhere we find, obviously, in the Constitution where it should be taught. So these guys know what they're doing. They brand this way for safe school. So they're doing the sex ed, the far extreme stuff, the LGBTQ stuff, the queer theory under something called anti-bullying. The ironic thing, though, Kelly, is the budget that's appropriated for bullying, it's not actually used for this. It's the federal money that's used for this. But I don't want to blow up all the listeners out there. So what we have is comprehensive sex ed. I mean, that was a battle royale. I may quote the year wrong. I think it was about 2014 here, where these activists pushed comprehensive sex ed, which, by the way, guys, it includes porn literacy. That's the centerpiece of it. It includes K through 12, introduction of sexuality, and pleasure is the centerpiece. K through 12. And Kelly, if I'm not mistaken, in every single academic domain. Is that right?
Yes, they're really pushing this everywhere. The goal is to mandate this nationwide in K through 12. And it really got, it took off really at the United Nations with the International Planned Parenthood Federation, and their founding documents lay out everything that they plan to do. But their key components include pleasure, sexual rights, and what they call sexual citizenship. And it is absolutely graphic. This idea that it is focused on pleasure, they're actually promoting that in the name of health and us wanting to encourage kids to be healthy, that we have to teach pleasure. And I've already seen, coming from, these global entities, they're starting to have more students, which is how they operate, say, I was never taught how to have a pleasurable sexual experience. And so I missed out on this, that, and the other. And they often set things up that they're already planning to do this way. But the content is incredibly graphic. I mean, this right here, beyond magenta.
What the hell is this? A 6-year-old?
Right. So this book has been in the school libraries. It's been recommended, and especially for 9th to 12th grades. But it says, I was sexually mature right there. And you can see that whole quote. What I mean by sexually mature is that I knew about sex from 6 up. So when they say 6 up, they're talking about age 6. I used to kiss other guys in my neighborhood, make out with them, and perform oral sex on them. I really liked it. And it gets into continued detail. And they never, ever say this is severely wrong. That this is, they want, in the ideology of sex positive teaching and the discussion of pleasure, they don't want to say, they don't even want boundaries. They want to push the boundaries. And that's exactly what that book does, and so many others, and the curriculum.
So we have tonight, Janet is in the audience. She is our North Carolina resident expert in comprehensive sex ed. I'm glad that she could join us. And she's been on this for a very long time. We've got some soldiers here who, Janet, as well as I do, we've got to educate the rest of the population here in North Carolina, not just the parents, but the grandparents. Look, you show this kind of material to anyone, and unless they have a mental disorder, they're not going to like it. Kelly, I have to tell you a true story. One day, I had a school board candidate on, and we were discussing keeping gender changes secret from the parents. Well, the next day, I had a ton of teachers during the day when they're supposed to be teaching, mad and irate that I was doing that. And most of them were males. Most of them were males who were so upset they had to hit me up on Facebook while they're supposed to be working. And a couple of them were advocating for comprehensive sex ed. So, I'm not sitting here suggesting that, all male teachers who are promoting this stuff are perverts. But hey, if comprehensive sex ed comes in, the centerpiece of grooming is using peppering up your victims in the name of education. I don't know. It seems like it would be a good way to do it.
Yeah, it's disgusting and shocking. I mean, one of the books I remember when I went to the library, because after this, what we call in short CSE had passed here, we were then seeing the Department of Ed in California was updating the health framework. So the books that they recommended, one was a book by Heather Karina of the website Scarletine, and it's called SEX. And it says it's the all you need to know guide to get you through your teens and 20s. So originally, Heather Karina's book was recommended for 9th to 12th graders as a school-wide read. Well, it was very interesting what happened because at the Department of Education, they removed it from the health framework. But then just a year and a half ago, I met a student whose entire health class in California was based on this book. And the book discusses in depth the topics of BDSM. It says, what is it? How do I do it? And it also talks about all of the slang terminology for fisting, for deeper manual sex.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Blood play, all these graphic.
Wow. So what you're looking at, again, this came from Kelly. This is in California and other places. Janet pointed out, North Carolina has it too. K through 12 curriculum. Do not kid yourself, guys, and say, well, it's only done in certain grades. And that's not true. In fact, the surveys here, what was preparing the battlefield, if you will, these surveys were given in school to middle schoolers as young as 11 years old. We're asking the most outrageous questions. By the way, Kelly, parents were told, hey, give us permission. We're going to be asking your child about abstinence. Nothing could have been further from the truth. And to your point, they're using these surveys to say, hey, gee, not enough sex talk is going on at home. The government has to take over for you. This is nuts. I mean, I'm a pretty modest person. This is embarrassing the hell out of me.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
well,
I'm not ready for this, man.
Well, and the whole goal, in my opinion, is to remove the natural barriers that kids have. They're removing the barriers. They're encouraging sexual exploration. And they're also removing kids from the parents because the parents now become these outdated adults who don't relate to us and they don't affirm us. And we need to explore all of these things. Oh, I see. Okay. So the 3 R's is one of the curricula taught by the trainers at the School Health Training Center at ECU. Wow.
Do you know about this? The 3 R's? I do not. But
rights, respect, responsibility. Yes. Rights, respect, responsibility is used here in California as what else do we have? We have positive prevention plus is another one that's used. We have Apex, Planned Parenthood a lot.
Let me just stop you. So the name prevention is a problem. And if North Carolina people, ding, ding, prevention is supposed to be taught in schools. So them naming it prevention, and here it is, all this pornography. I read what there was. And most of the slides that you sent me, I swear I cannot use them. They're so graphic. So they're labeling this stuff prevention. Parents, grandparents, interested citizens, listen up. We have got to stop this right now before it spreads. I know it's already started.
Right. Well, and one of the curriculum company is Advocates for Youth. Advocates for Youth began in 1980 as the Center for Population Options. So that's interesting. With somebody who, was really focused.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of Bill Gates going around, unfortunately, but he's definitely backing a lot of the CSE content and Planned Parenthood as well. But here, I mean, we have big contracts happening between schools and Planned Parenthood. One district here paid them $38,340 to come and teach this graphic CSE. And the other thing is that kids are being marketed by Planned Parenthood here to go and use their services. So one of the parents, they gave me a gift card.
So what I want to tell you, here's how this shows up here, Kelly. So North Carolina, this is the way it works. The Department of Public Instruction will actually get a team together and write the standards. Okay. So the State Board of Education says, okay, DPI, you're okay to do that, they'll start writing the standards. Well, as soon as they write the standards, schools are scrambling, going, crap, we don't have a curriculum team, especially in the low-income schools. We don't have a curriculum team that can write the stuff that would match the standards. So we're going to bring in a third-party vendor. Hello, Planned Parenthood. That's how it happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important, here we've battled ethnic studies, and they love to tout and say there's a school to prison pipeline. In reality, there's a school to Planned Parenthood pipeline. That's exactly what's going on here. And a school in Pasadena in Southern California, about 6.5 hours south of where I live, they actually voted to have a student intern and work at Planned Parenthood as part of the school district.
Wait, they're recruiting from within the
students. Mm-hmm. And then our local Planned Parenthood where I live has a new youth program where young teens as young as 15 can join and become one of their advocates and work with Planned Parenthood. They had to fill out a big survey. And basically what kids were given in class is, if you come and see us at Planned Parenthood, you'll get a free gift card. And so I was told by parents, and they showed me the slip, that they were bribed basically with $5 Starbucks gift cards. So come and see us.
Yeah. So are you listening, everybody? Are you listening? Depending on how these standards turn out. Now, look, we have put maximum pressure on legislators to have oversight over this process. We have several insiders that have told us that Catherine Truitt is very angry with us and very resentful that we would call into question anyone in her department writing these standards. I don't give a damn. Look at those slides. They speak for themselves. I didn't write that. Her employees wrote that. So we have to stay on this, because I'm telling you, Kelly, you know this, they're going to let a foot in the door. These terrible organizations. Let's keep going. I want you to tell people what happens when Planned Parenthood gets their foot into the door of the school.
Well, when they're in the school district, not only are they getting exorbitant amount of money, but they're getting clients, and they're getting patients, and they're getting people who, follow their ideology and think they're great. And, we don't have our kids in school to be marketed to be advertised for services. But kids are not only being advertised for services, but there are here absolutely no school districts that are limiting what Planned Parenthood can or cannot say. And then when I went to look at the curriculum was absurd. And one of the I remember it was the HIV risk continuum. Yep, so it sounds like they're teaching kids about, the concerns of HIV, but the columns were no risk, and then low to medium risk, and then higher risk. So it didn't even say high risk. And then some of the things in the low to medium risk column, and this was a curriculum for middle school, was anal sex with a condom. And then in the higher risk column was anal sex without a condom. And so for an organization like Planned Parenthood, who says that they are bringing medically accurate, age appropriate, and inclusive sex education, and they're meeting students where they're at, is what I heard this woman from Planned Parenthood say in Sacramento. And she said, basically that students have been surveyed. And so, are we going to, they're already asking these questions. So are we going to meet them where they're at, or are we going to just, whatever? But all this to say, what are the scientific, medically accurate measures for low to medium risk, or, no risk, low to medium risk? And then what does higher even mean? There's nothing medically accurate or medically complete or scientific to that. It's just a bunch of nonsense. And so we should want better for our kids, and we should absolutely look and see the curriculum. But for example, that Heather Karina book that I mentioned earlier, here the State Department of Ed said that they were taking it out of the health framework. And then I meet this student whose entire health class was based on that book. She said the books were lined up on the shelf. So it wasn't like the teacher had one copy. She had tens and tens of copies of Heather Karina's SEX book. And, this student talked with me about how the teacher would, for inclusivity and to make the students feel, welcomed, would talk with the kids about the teacher's sexual preferences and open marriage and all kinds of unbelievable, shocking stuff. So what is happening in the schools is our kids are absolutely being introduced to ideas that they may not be accessing. This idea that every single 100% kid is just every single kid in school is looking at porn is not true. And the idea that it needs to be introduced, most of these organizations that push a lot of this content, for example, there's a writer of the book, Sex is a Funny Word, Corey. He used to own a sex toy shop. Heather Karina has been interviewed for Playboy magazine. We've got the SECUS organization that's very much pushing comprehensive sexuality education. They recently had, I believe it's Red, Wine, and Blue group on, a representative from that group with them. But SECUS had a series of webinars that they held. And one of the guests on that webinar that they held had been a speaker at an adult film conference in Las Vegas several years in a row. Another thing about the SECUS organization is that when they hosted these webinars, at least one of such webinars was stated to be for students as well. And they started each webinar with an opening that said it was sponsored by B-Vibe, which is a sex toy company. So again, it's unbelievable the content that we're seeing.
No, this is this is crazy. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through exactly what was on this this survey. We reported on this, close to a year ago, something like that. But I'm going to just show you these questions. This is for middle school. Middle school, I mean, I've got a middle schooler. She's 11. We don't talk about this stuff, but this is what they're asking here. And they're building up the demand. So you'll see here, when you have questions about HIV, AIDS, who do you talk to? Right? Parent, teacher, etc. Not sure. Give them a lot of options. In other words, they're building up the demand because they're going to say, not enough people to have anyone to talk to, right? That's what they're doing. Have your parents ever talked? This second question: have your parents ever talked to you about what happens to birds and bees? Now, Kelly, and I know they're going to say, hey, guess what? There's not enough chitter chatter about sex going on at home. Here we go. Have you ever had sexual intercourse? Next 4 questions ask you about body weight. So, okay, wow, that give me, they're asking about AIDS, abstaining. Have you ever been taught about that? So, but they go on here. They're going to go on and ask, you get the idea, right, Kelly? Let me keep searching for this.
Right. Well, and we have a similar survey here. It's called the California Healthy Kids Survey. And it asks a lot of those same intrusive questions. And a lot of this is coming from or being sent to the Center for Disease Control, where their ultimate goal is these community schools, where, here in California, in the Los Angeles Unified School District, there's already a series of school health centers that operate in accordance with Planned Parenthood. And again, they are getting kids young. In Washington State, students can already access, the hormones or puberty blockers that have serious life-altering consequences.
Guys, they can't hear because, in the state of California, you need to be 12 to, without parental knowledge or consent, get hormone blockers. In North Carolina, 0. There is no constitutional age for that. So we've got mental health clinics being put in every single school here. And then we have the age of 0 that you need to ask for really any type of psychological services, which would include prescribing medication. Now, I'm not saying that it is happening. It can happen. That's just the way the laws are set up.
Right. Yeah, here foster kids, if you're in the foster care system or you're emancipated from your parents, you can just leave campus and get these things. Any child in our state age, especially middle school age, they can go and get abortion or birth control or any of those things without parental consent or knowledge. And schools in our state have actually conducted trainings to ensure that parents never find out.
Yeah,
And
we
that
have
is
that
the
here too.
direction we're in.
Well, that we actually have that too. So the government owns the kids, especially, and all this stuff. And don't think that it's not going on here. Again, the door opening for this is comprehensive sex ed. Now we've got a guy named Jamie Falkenberry who is a right-hand man, if you will, to our state superintendent. And I mean, when this school mental health bill was written, it came partially out of the lieutenant governor's office, which he used to work for. I mean, his wife, get this, was the lobbyist for Takeda Pharmaceuticals. That would be your Adderall and it'd be your Lupron Depot. So there was a strong influence from someone married to a lobbyist in on this bill. He's still there, by the way. He is a driving force now in rapidly putting in these psychiatry centers in every single school. And guess what? His wife is the lobbyist for these psychiatry centers inside of the school. That is what Catherine Truitt has in her office right now. So we've got a direct line with a profit motive, and using our children, essentially being a pariah on our children. Terrible stuff.
Yeah. Catherine needs to get.
She calls herself a Republican.
Oh, man. I am so tired of the people that are calling themselves that are not.
Yeah, indeed. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But look, when people are lining their pockets on the backs of our children, we have a serious problem. And a lot of people should know better. We cannot have the age of 0 that children can get medical treatment, or specifically psychiatric treatment, which gender dysphoria qualifies for, without parental knowledge or consent. I mean, when you and I, we first had our conversation, we talked for a couple hours, and then I called you back maybe the week after. I'm like, oh my God, it's happening here. And there's no bottom to it, right? There's no age limit. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's what they want. They want full and complete control, and they want a complete erosion of parents. And they're going to go about this through mental health, through all kinds of funding modes, and definitely through comprehensive sexuality education. And if they can't get comprehensive sexuality education into the schools one way, then they're going to work it in through these community healthy schools and the health centers and all of that. And, I remember watching this webinar from the Future of Sex Education group, and this woman stated that sexual activity begins at birth. I mean, it's unbelievable, the beliefs that they have.
I mean, Kelly, let's go back to that picture of the little 2-year-old toddler feeding a baby with an imaginary bottle or what have you. And that's trans. I mean, you're right. There is no age limit. I mean, that is an insinuation that a child is a sexual being by definition. In North Carolina, the person who's heading the department that will write these standards, guys, to get involved. I know everybody's feeling like, oh my God, what are we going to do? I mean, look, contacting your legislator and letting them know is the best way to do that. We're having elections now, or pre-elections. You need to ask whoever you're going to vote for, hey, listen, what are you going to do to provide oversight over the Department of Public Instruction as they're writing these sex ed standards? You need to ask them outright.
Yeah. People need to be confronted with the reality of what this is. And sometimes that's hard because, I mean, even here, when we tried to share some of the content in the books and literature and curriculum, Facebook back in 2019 was slapping us with,
Yeah.
we had to remove your post because it had sensitive content. So, well, if it's sensitive for social media, why is it okay for our children in school? It shouldn't be.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not.
Right.
We know that it's not, I'll never forget our great Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson here was having a press conference, and he showed multiple pictures of the stuff that's in the library. Kelly, you and I know if it's in the library, that's to soften everything up to put it in class. But he was, putting these pictures out there. You know what they are. I've shown you, we've seen them. And then the news media had to block it out. And it was so funny because they said, yeah, Mark Robinson alleges that this stuff was age inappropriate or pornography, and they themselves had to block it out. So where's the alleging?
Exactly. And why are people who are writing these books and driving this content, why are they so pro porn, and what are their ties to that industry? And why are groups like SECUS having somebody who, spoke at an adult film conference in Vegas several times? Why are these people now caring about education of children in sex ed? Why that? I mean, they are the ones that are really ultimately pushing these boundaries nationwide, and they're robbing children of the gift and opportunity to have a child or have a childhood. I mean, they are ultimately just taking childhood and wiping it away. I mean, even this idea of how they teach children consent is disturbing.
Well, Janet, you're wrong. I hate to tell you. Here's why. Social emotional learning allows conversations about sexuality, like the gender unicorn and stuff like that. So while I can sit down and say, okay, here's what you're going to be teaching for sex ed, that doesn't control for this other stuff that comes in under SEL. Moreover, if we're talking about CSE or the comprehensive sex ed, my understanding, and I could be wrong, but my understanding is that is going to be part of every class. So you could conceivably have, while we're on multiplication, kids, let's talk about, right? I mean, is that your understanding of comprehensive sex ed?
Yes, actually, part of this future of sex education, 30 years of research presentation that I watched, they actually talked about why they want to weave it into the younger grades. And they also discussed how it was this positive that it was being woven into every single subject. And one of the things they said about why they want CSE in the younger grades is because they want to get the kids before heteronormative values and assumptions become more deeply ingrained and less mutable. That's a quote.
So that means grooming. They want to groom your children. Look, the gay people that are in this movement with us, they don't like it either. Obviously, they think it makes them look bad, but they don't believe anyone should be forced to be gay, straight, or whatever. And also, at very young ages, prying information about sexuality from children before they're ready to come out. A 13-year-old who's struggling with feelings, or a 14-year-old. I mean, that's deeply harmful. So this sexuality talk, this grooming, proponents will say we're pro-trans, we are pro-LGBTQ, and we believe that we need to have this so that, kids can feel safe and they can see themselves in the curriculum. It actually supports some very emotionally unsafe habits for potentially gay teens. So it's not good.
Right. Well, and just the idea that they're telling kids, even from a young age, that everything sexual is just perfectly normal. If people want to have a lot of sexual partners, these ideas of threesomes or foursomes or different things like that, or somebody wants to, fill in the blank, any kind of sexual act is just perfectly normal. And they're teaching
in a classroom.
Yeah, that was those pages of that book that are just horrific to see. I remember the book Beyond Magenta. That's the one where the writer is talking about at age 6 giving oral sex on other people. And that book is actually supposed to be a nonfiction account of a real transgender person. So that makes the book even more concerning. That book was provided by the teachers union. There's the state union, then there's their district offices, but this was our local union. They had a whole LGBTQ kind of event where they handed out a lot of these different books. Princess Boy was one of the books, but Beyond Magenta was another book, and there were several of them. Gino, but all this to say, the Human Rights Campaign, I've also heard, might give books to teachers and various organizations.
So
teachers can get them.
Yeah, I mean, the Human Rights Campaign is something that Ellen Essick is involved with. And by the way, her department it's fairly small, but has several activists. And how do I know they're activists? They're self-identified. I'm not going to give somebody a moniker in this instance that they didn't ask for. She is a self-identified LGBTQ advocate. There's another woman, Suzanne, who's there, who has been doing this. They've been there forever. They're into this. And they held some position at the Human Rights Campaign, which puts this garbage out there. So in other words, we have that going on. We have somebody very close to writing our sex ed standards who they're activists on this stuff, Kelly. So we have to come out. Now, we talked about some great research tools. So I'm going to close it up this evening too, to let everybody know, with exposing this stuff, it's power. We've exposed fraud, financial fraud, corruption, et cetera, of groups and people. Will continue to do that. This is the same thing. I mean, you've got somebody who is conflict of interest doing these standards. Tell us about a couple of tips, just as we close, for parents to do their own homework.
I think it's really important to look at your school board agendas and the past meetings, and search the word health, search the word sex, search the word sexuality, see if there's any contracts with organizations. I know different board minutes operate differently, so some are searchable, but if you have a searchable board agenda, start looking in that. Look at your state Department of Education and see what kind of content they put out. Everything that you find, save it before you expose it, because it will be altered and changed. Almost a given.
Guys, one thing, not only do you screenshot something, here's what you do. You want to record, we set the camera up, by the way, behind us. So it records us actually searching for the information, because maybe they say it's spoofed or whatever. And there's a lot of ways to prove that's not true. But we do a screen recording. At the same time, we do a back recording, and we do the screenshot. So we can show the date and time it was accessible and us accessing it. Just if you want to take one layer, we're kind of paranoid here, further. But Kelly, doing that and going to the Wayback Machine, waybackmachine.org, I believe. That, I'm telling you, we find things that people have taken down from websites on Wayback Machine.
That's great. And I also think too, especially for this subject, looking into the United Nations and UNESCO and the International Planned Parenthood Federation. One of the places I started exploring when I was learning about CSE in California, I wanted to know, okay, where are they having already that full political freedom to establish the agenda that they have? And I started looking into Planned Parenthood Toronto and their affiliated Teen Health Source and the materials there, which are graphic and shocking. Originally, a lot of the content, it would say the ages on it. They've since changed that age range, which was including younger teen ages. But these were websites on there about anal play and how to participate in that, and all kinds of really graphic content. And so if the Planned Parenthood organization is getting away with this in another country, do not ever think that they don't want to do that in our
yeah.
country.
Are you kidding? Toronto now, I'm sure you know this. Heroin is legal. They made crack cocaine legal. I believe it's Toronto. It's a pretty big city there. I think it's one of the cities. But anyway, I mean, Canada's got some crazy things going on. I mean, insane. And so that is a good way to look at it, is that go like Kelly has done. Find the very worst place and look at that. That's what you're trying to prevent. I thought that I was doing that with you when we had that big call, but we were doing it for each other, because North Carolina is, I believe, in many ways worse than California. And we've talked about that too.
Right. Yeah. And the founding documents of CSE are put forth by the International Planned Parenthood Federation. So if you were to look into International Planned Parenthood Federation, Comprehensive Sexuality Education, you'll get a very thick brochure of their guiding documents and their 7 core principles for CSE, including number 4, which is pleasure. And then there's other documents that they've put forth that tell you exactly the plan and what they're doing. And there's people right now in African countries that are trying to fight it because they don't want it there.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't want it here either. That's why we have to open our eyes. And Janet, like you said, we cannot have comprehensive sex ed here. We've got a superintendent who is willing to be dishonest in order to just have everything status quo. And we've got, a lot of times legislators in the dark about what's going on. We have to turn on the light for them. They have to know, especially because it's election season. That gives us a great pretext for asking questions and training our legislators what we want them to do. So, Kelly, thank you for coming on tonight. And yeah, we got to stay on this, and we'll have you on again. Like I said, pardon us. I mean, we were going to have a slideshow tonight. Literally 3/4 of the stuff you sent me, can't put it on or we're going to get bounced.
Yeah, I totally understand. It's bad.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We've got to start raising our voices louder. I know it's vacation season, etc., but it's back to school time to get back at it. So thank you all. Have a great night. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.